Forward Base Sawano at Xeno Island by Tactical Cat. Illustrated by Zizus Toby and two pieces from Tactical Cat. Part 1. Introduction. The events depicted herein are entirely real and reflect living persons with absolute accuracy. Corrosive slimes, green onions, metal plating, human tissues, and various prides were injured in the making of this story. All similarities to real places, people, or things are not coincidental, but are directly intended and have no inaccuracies at all whatsoever. In the absence of purified animal viscera, the contents herein may be used as a substitute during the annual sacrifice to Hiroyuki Sawano. Dedicated to the crazy people over at insert version number of whatever server we ended up on this time, who make life bigger and a little bit more colorful. A fan work of Hiroyuki Sawano's compositions. All songs linked and names referenced belong to him. Episode 1. Welcome to Sawano Base at Xeno Island. Slam! The card banged onto the table, revealing a dragon face up, with wings outspread. "Take that!" he announced half-heartedly. It was already as loud as it was going to get here in Nature's Kitchen, with near full occupancy due to the scheduled maintenance. The higher-ups had decided to order in the fleet back to Sawano Base. Something about maintenance and outfitting. Having half the fleet at the forward base meant that a commanding officer appearing around the corner had become commonplace, and thanks to all the new ships docked for the week, Lieutenant Angela's kitchen had turned into a common area. Most of the men flocked here for the exquisite teriyaki, but she had also gotten permission from the Admiral to keep on some lo-fi music during the day. "Come on, John, you're gonna make a mess if you keep slamming down cards like that," said Smith across the table, wiping up the purple alcohol that had spilled over the cards. "Yeah, I know, sorry," complained John. "I'm just on edge today. There's so much preparation to do. From the outside, everything's fine and dandy, but everyone's still nervous." "Probably why everyone's collecting at the kitchen on downtime," observed Smith. "Angela's lo-fi music really helps. And it's not just us expendables coming here. I even saw some of the captains at a game of Yu-Gi-Oh! Yesterday during lunch." "The captains?" questioned John. "I wonder if they know something about all this. Why would the bigwigs send the entire special task force fleet to the forward base all of a sudden? I don't get it, and nobody's bothering to tell us." "We're expendables, John. Just finish your beer and carry out your orders. Anyway, don't you have a repair project going on? How's it coming?" With an immense sigh, John stood, lifted his tray of empty bowls, and headed toward the counter at the end of the room. Smith followed. "We're a little behind schedule. The Sonaso Fairn took a lot more damage than we first projected. Not normal stuff either. Since she's normally light on armor, Senior Officer Annie thinks we might have to refit the entire outer plating, and that means Lieutenant Commander Stin is going to want intel on the enemy weaponry once we get it off." He rolled his eyes. "Assuming we can get it off in the first place, because whatever put that hole in her side welded the inner and outer plates together, which is why we're behind schedule thermopeeling the thing off." As they slid their trays onto the cabinet, the attendants nodded them out. They turned into the main hall. "Sounds rough," empathized Smith. "You take care of her there, and let us know if you need the heavy laser gear. I'm headed out to the hangar. You going back to the docks?" "Yeah, I want to check if they've made any progress. Later." They waved casually and parted. He ruminated as he went down the hall. Metallic silver lined every wall of the base. It was secure, sterile, and silent, a little too perfect for a high-tech outpost embedded into the middle of Xeno Island, the front of the naval theater this hemisphere of the world. As he turned a corner, he instinctively saluted. Out of the corner of his eye was a sliver of the famed slim purple and black uniform that the enlisted boys sometimes saw around the halls. It was one of the captains. She was somewhat small in stature, unmistakably fit as soldiers had to be, but otherwise slim and unimposing, until you caught her eyes. Beneath an always-tied, efficient hair bun, Her eyes were like black holes that captured someone's gaze, but revealed no further information. Having experienced this once before, John went some ways further, deliberately avoiding eye contact. But then he paused and looked back. Suddenly, up from behind, another captain appeared from down the hall. "I am not sure that's where to find lunch, Yuki-san," said the white-haired captain who had appeared from behind the corner. His white hair and eyes clashed with the black sides of the uniform. The rounded edges of his glasses glinted, but behind them rested an inviting gaze, a contrast to her intense and icy glare. She briefly acknowledged him and reset her glance onto the wall. Well, more like through it. "Toby-san, you made it then," she commented quietly. Captain Toby walked up next to her, screen with the Sagittarius A press tucked under his arm. John strained his ears to make out everything from down the hall. They were surprisingly subdued to be amongst the renowned list of captains. "What are you looking at?" Toby inquired. "Not much. I was merely thinking about the others," she admitted. "Others?" The subtle raise in his voice admitted some surprise. "You mean the heroes we lost in the battle 2 years ago?" She had been reading their names etched into the wall. They were so inconspicuous that he had passed by that wall for years and forgotten they were there. In their unmarked gray, they were visible in the proper lighting at twilight, but they were difficult to make out during the day. "Admiral Now went through a lot to get their names engraved here, didn't he?" "It's true," she confirmed. "Things haven't been easy after that day." It seemed like the right moment for a sigh or pensive glance downward, but nothing came out. They hardly stirred. "Same on our front," reported Toby. "Unless AZ finds a way to armor our ships from those lasers of theirs, the more we throw metal plating at them, the slower we get. Maybe what we need isn't better armor, but superior weaponry." She wasn't very talkative, was she? "Toby-san," she turned to him suddenly. "How well did the Ashes hold up getting here? I'm in dock for another week at least. Some of the others had trouble, too. I heard Thulner-san was scheduled to arrive by now." "Let's check it out after lunch. I want to see the damage analysis, too." They nodded and headed towards the kitchen. What an interesting encounter, thought John. He had only seen the captain standing at attention in a row years ago at ceremony, when they were still commanders and lieutenants. Since then, they had been on the front lines non-stop, high demand by the bigwigs. He had the impression that he'd be seeing a lot more of these purple shirts in the future. He turned right and headed down a short flight of steps. Turn, lift of the handle, push forward of a heavy door, and he exited onto an expansive, sheltered platform, green-coated and bustling. On the opposite end of the dock platform was an outlet of water that opened into the sea. These were the underground docks, all 7 bays of them, concealed from air surveillance by the natural terrain above. This section of the base had been built underground to help conceal any new weapons that were being tested. He went towards his station at the left end of the dock, torches and lasers fizzing away. Slipping a dark visor over his eyes, he breathed in the smoky fumes and the scent of oil and over-concentrated metal. It looked like another ship had just arrived. Now 5 of the 7 repair docks were occupied, each with a ship damaged to different levels. The one in the middle was practically sinking. When he had commented earlier that the high-ups had recalled all of the captains from the front lines, he really meant that it had been more of a frantic scramble to get them back into uncontested territory as quickly as possible. Naturally, giving that team such an order meant that it would be done efficiently and mercilessly, especially without regard to the mechanics who would have to clean up afterward. No one was surprised when one of the captains sailed home 2 halves of a ship. He took a fond glance at the large letters detailed carefully across the prow of each ship. Heavy armored XLTT, glass cannon Ashes, submarine the Coordinate, logistics backup Fogel and Kafik, on which the rest of them relied, and tech specialist carrier Sona Sofan, to which his team had just been assigned since its arrival. Such an impressive lineup for ships that looked no different from the average fleet ship. Their strength was in their uniformity, specialization, and spectacularly boring ordinariness. Everyone this end of Sawano Base and behind knew the reputation these ships held, but without reading the names on the sides, no one would recognize them, just as it was intended to be. "Just where have you been?" exclaimed a diminutive dark-haired mechanic, hanging downwards off a platform crane, feet locked behind railing to hold her in place. In her hand was a clipboard, matched dark green with her full-body uniform. She waved the board cautiously beneath her head. "Oh, Senior Chief, I was just..." John saluted immediately as the gaze of the entire platoon fixed on him. "Just ignore it," she commented dryly, not caring to hide her disappointment. He had been late yesterday, too. At this rate, she'd probably make him take the late shift as well. "You can explain later, John. For now, read over Lieutenant Commander Stin's report and find us a way to get these plates separated without thermo-cutting them apart. I don't want to spend any longer up here than necessary." So that's why she was hanging up there. Out of all the mechanics, Senior Chief Annie had the most tested method for getting into difficult spaces and pulling off convoluted jobs that required precarious positioning. No one was better with a welding torch at Xenodock. Surprisingly enough, though, being high up like this where she excelled spiked her fear levels. When Senior Chief Annie had to do a precarious repair job, it became a good motivation for the team to work faster. "Come on, people," she directed, turning on a thermotorch in front of her visor. "These are the jewels of the fleet. We need them in working condition by the end of the week. Let's get to it." They resumed their posts, and John perused the preliminary report.